Welcome to Parallax. Parallax, the construction amidst eternal decay. Parallax, the portal to the edge of chaos. Parallax, poem and provocation.
So welcome, Marianne Costa, to Parallax Podcasts. We're going to do a course in January called Cracking the Code of the Minor Arcana, the Tarot as a Tool for Self-Observation and Survival in the Real World. So there's echoes of Gurdjieff there a little bit, even in the title. But maybe you could start by speaking about this relationship between the majors and the minors in the tarot. Because the majors you've described as being like the major keys in music and the minors, the minor key in music. And I think it might be interesting to discuss the relationship.
Yeah, it's just an analogy of, obviously, it's not a matter of saying that it's similar to music, but they're really two different modes, and they're absolutely, we have to work with both of them. And the reason why the Rider-Waite deck became so hugely popular in the whole world is that at the turn of the last century, most people had no idea actually what the pip cards meant. And because they are, so I don't know if we can see them. Yeah. So when the tarot appeared in France, it was called Carte de tarot à enseignes italiennes, with Italian suits. And actually, yes, these were the traditional Italian suits with the swords and the cups and the wands and the coins. And all of them consist of basically geometrical arrangements that are really hard to decipher if you're just, trying to exert your, like Mr. Gurdjieff would say, imagination in the despicable sense of the term, which means the subjective fantasy, because of course what Henri Corbin describes as the imaginal world, which Mr. Gurdjieff would more talk about in terms of mentation by form, is a completely different notion. So the playing cards per se pre-existed the tarot. And there is a very strong hypothesis when you say I have an interpretation. Actually, I like the fact that I don't have an interpretation. I'm trying to rediscover and to apply to the tarot elements of the wisdom of the West. And when I say the West, with, of course, all the influences from Asia, because the West has been, even the playing cards probably have their origins. It's very hard because all the historians are, fighting with each other on those subjects. But we know that there are pip cards existing in China way before we have playing cards in Europe. We know that as far as the court cards are concerned, here is the suit of the coin. The Ganjifas in India predate the Western cards. And there is a hypothesis, which is not confirmed, and it's just one of the hypotheses, but that actually the major arcana of the tarot might have come from Sufi, and I put it in air quotes because Sufi is a little bit of a everything bagel kind of word, but at least from the Muslim world. And we do know that there are some Mamluk cards from Egypt or Syria that predate or are contemporary to the tarot without the major arcana, but with very similar pip cards. So all of that brings us back to the 1400s, 1500s. So it brings us back to the time of Renaissance, and it brings us back before that to the medieval time, and it brings us back to, Al-Andalus and alchemy and Kabbalah and everything that we know of, but we don't have the knowledge of anymore. So at the end of the 19th century, when all the New Age of the time wanted to re-enliven the deep meaning of tarot, and that was amazing intention, but based on, you know, crazy ideas about Egypt, based on the concept of the Masons. So stuff that was sometimes a little bit lightweight, like some of the New Ages today, a little bit lightweight. And I'm not saying that in a despising way. I'm just saying we cannot hold within our minds the knowledge of one civilization and even less of many. So if we want to enter the path of knowledge, we have to sacrifice our desire, you know, like in meetings with remarkable men, we have to sacrifice the desire for intellectual curiosity, because that's leading us nowhere. That's leading us to an impasse. So there are many ways, whether it's, you know, floral arrangements, sacred dances, or any forms of true yoga, silence, meditation, etc., in the spiritual traditions, to encrypt, or, you know, with the bowls of Bengal, the singing, the singing and dancing, to encrypt knowledge and a path of knowledge, a practice of knowledge beyond words. But we have to understand that human activity itself, and here I'm thinking, for instance, of agriculture, the traditional kind, is a path of knowledge, because it's a life and death relationship with Earth and the cosmos. So one of the hypotheses about the European playing cards is that they were originally a calendar for crop and sowing, you say? And it's very interesting, because when you look at those hypotheses, they match. 52 cards, like if we have 3 court cards, like there are 52 weeks in the year, you know. So we don't, the response for the intellectual curiosity, which is not satisfying on the intellectual plane, but deeply satisfying on the being plane, is we don't know.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So maybe you said a lot there. Maybe I could ask a
Yeah,
couple
go ahead.
questions.
Sorry,
I
I'm
want to
always
go back.
talkative. Go ahead.
No
I'm
worries. I want to go back to what we were
drinking so I
talking.
don't talk.
Sorry. No, it's an I don't want to interrupt your narrative because it's very, very interesting. But I was
Not
wondering
a
about the
narrative.
imaginal.
It's a crazy daimon or duende taking over my skull. And it's great that you interrupted, because you're fighting with the angel, which is something I do not know how to do. So I bless your existence. Go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I get excited and I want to interrupt people. I want to wrestle with the duende, the angel, as you say. Um, so the imagination is kind of an interesting topic, and you know, Corbin's imaginal and all that. It seems like the notorious aspect of tarot is it's just unbounded kind of fantasy which people you know apply to it. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, at the same time, we don't know a lot of stuff, as you were saying.
In 7
So,
letters, wanking.
yeah, wanking. So we liked, you know, to esoteric wanking, so to speak, is a big pastime,
In
especially
Gurdjieffian
of
terms,
dudes, especially of esoteric
titillation.
guys. What?
In
Yeah,
Gurdjieffian terms, titillation.
titillation. Yeah. So, but so how do we, let's say, like, how do we do the real imaginal versus the sort of obscene,
Yeah.
egomaniacal, narcissistic,
Yeah.
other kind of fantasy that
Which I
seems
have
to inhabit
practiced.
the tarot world? Yeah.
Which I have practiced, because titillation is the rehearsal to lovemaking. So let's not
Mm.
shame it.
Okay, good,
We
good.
have
Thank
all
you.
practiced it,
Oh, geez,
but
sorry.
at some point we need to grow up.
Mm.
So it's, you know that my root teacher was Jodorowsky. And Jodorowsky actually, even though he loves to pretend that he's invented everything himself, but he was actually rooted in a lineage. So I've become very interested in that lineage. And I've become increasingly interested in the feminine aspect of that lineage. And the feminine aspects consist in two very remarkable women. One was Marianne Adélaïde Lenormand, who was a psychic on the 19th century, and it has been recently discovered that she was the very first person using the tarot cards and interpreting the tarot cards as a future telling device. So I find that very interesting. Why? Because she was crazy, of course, like every psychic is legitimately crazy. So, Marianne Lenormand, she would like tell the future to dukes and wives of emperors and also to very common people. And on a regular basis, because she was a witch, she was thrown to jail. So, and she had like, she was, in French, it's called graphomanie, when you can't stop writing. So she wrote so many books. And when she did, so she wrote books about her being thrown to jail. And when she was in jail and they did not give her her tools, she was reading pigeon shit and dust. And, they gave her one candle and she was reading the way the candle was dripping. So she had an obsession for interpreting reality, which then went into an egomaniac delirium of predicting the future. But that's a very interesting way in helplessness, in powerlessness, which is where the mind, the thinking mind, arrives when it realizes it cannot know through its forces alone. You have to go back to a feminine attitude. Women are very good at helplessness because they were forced into it for centuries and centuries by the patriarchy. And just like jazz or tango came from the misery of the slaves, the enslavement of the feminine mind, of the feminine initiative, of the feminine wisdom. And Mr. Gurdjieff himself is all the time joking with, if you want to know what thing to do, just ask a woman and do the contrary. So, I mean, even a very respectable teacher like him, yeah, he was joking. He fucking wasn't joking. He was a fucking patriarch, because every one of us has their, dark side. So what's very interesting in being a woman in this time and age is that we know in our bones, I mean, women on the path, the other ones, they just preoccupied about having like, fuller lips. But we know in our bones what powerlessness means. And the resources that we need to go to in powerlessness, they are anchored in the physical sensation, in impartial observation, and in the opening of the heart, because it's the only thing that works. So what every mystic has done throughout at least the 20th century is claim that the path consisted in becoming feminine. It is called feminine because of the patriarchal context. It's welcoming helplessness and letting inner, deeper spaces open up that actually work. And women know what actually work because they know when they miscarry, and they know when they give birth, they know when they can breastfeed, and they know when the breastfeeding is stuck. So, I mean, in the feminine experience, there is a depth of understanding of what is lifelike and what isn't. So the way of looking at the tarot that was, opened up by Marianne Lenormand, of course, everything was then stolen by Etelia, Eliphas Levi, etc., all these people who became so famous. Same thing happens with the Rider-Waite deck. The one thing that is worthy of our interest in the Rider-Waite deck is the beauty and the feminism of Pamela Colman Smith's art. The rest is bullshit. But what Pamela Colman Smith did was she gave back the feminine juiciness to the tarot. And I think that's what makes the Rider-Waite deck worthy of interest today. And then the last, I mean, she wasn't a part of Jodorowsky's heritage, but she's a part of the tarot heritage. And in the Jodorowskian lineage, there is one essential actor, much more important than André Breton, and that's Leonora Carrington. She lived in Mexico at the time. She had been deeply fed in her childhood by all the Celtic legends and the magic of her um, um, British and beyond British ascendance by her grandmother. Then she started having her affair with the Surrealists. And then life took her to Mexico. She didn't necessarily want to go there, but she settled there, and she became a student of the Gurdjieff path, of course, protesting and kicking and mocking, like she always did with every kind of school she went to. But she and Remedios Varo, who was her very good friends, and they were both incredible painters, studied very deeply Uspensky, and then Leonora studied with Christopher Fremantle, who was a legitimate, really student of Uspensky and then Gurdjieff himself, and they also opened up to all the magical world. And Leonora was an amazing student. She had an amazing library because she was looking in books for what she had experienced in her own flesh. That's what makes her such an amazing student. So she briefly interacted with Jodorowsky at the time when he was a theater director, and he did her play Penelope, where she took care of all the costumes and the set, and he took care of the direction of actors. And of course, at sometimes she started hating him because she hated anything that had a big ego, and even more a big male ego. So, no need for further explanation. So I think at some point, I mean, I know that from the Leonora side, of course, that's not something that Jodo himself told me, but at some point, Jodo asked if he could see her, and she said, "I will see him if he leaves his ego by the door," and he never went back. But there was a moment when they had this nice interaction, and she probably fancied him because she liked good-looking guys, and she was like 15 years older than him, and he was kind of like fuckable at the time. So, well, he was fuckable for a long time, otherwise I wouldn't have been with him. But I mean, he was specifically like young and buoyant and everything. And she gave him the key, which Susanna Perth and Teresa Arc are now using in their trial of interpretation of the Leonora Tarot, which is an interesting effort. I won't say more about it. And they wanted to hire me, and then I was kind of like probably too expensive for them, so it didn't go on. But she told Alejandro, and her vision of the tarot was, it is self-explanatory. You just have to look.
Mm-hmm.
Vision quest, which is the contrary of titillation. So if we look, what do we see? A sword. So nobility, winning by the arms. So in the domain of society, nobility.
Mm-hmm.
And kingdom. So the political power. What do we see in a Christian culture? A chalice, which is also a temple. It looks like the Temple of Jerusalem. So the religious power. And with it, everything that has to do with forging, how do you say orfèvrerie in English? The goldsmith, the art of the goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a specific kind of art. This is the art of the blacksmith. And then it serves the power. And then the goldsmith serves the clergy.
Great.
And then we have the beating of money. But that money has branches. So we are talking about branching out with the economy. We are talking about tradesmen. And we are talking about people who make things. This could be anything. This could be in a bazaar in the East, someone making a little coffee machine. This could be merchants who do the road of silk. So this has no specific elite class definition. It's trading for everybody, but it's also knowing the world. And then the one thing that is not a made object is this, the wand. And this is nature. And this is water and fire because it has those little, wherever fire and water are used, we have those elements. You need fire and water to make a sword and to la tremper. How do you say? Tremper.
Beat it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not beat. When in French we say to dive it,
Oh, sorry. To dip it in something. Yeah.
dip it. And the dipping is the proof that the forging has been good because it doesn't break. So the proof of fire and water is also here around the wand. And just like the sword, the wand is held by a hand. So it's this notion of
What's the hand signify?
my dear, it's a hand.
It's a hand. Yeah. What does it symbolize?
Holding
I felt that was a wrong question somehow,
So it's
even when I
telling-
answered it. But what I mean is, why is there a hand in all of
Why
them coming out
suckering?
of something?
You are wiseacring. It
I'm
is.
wiseacring. Okay.
Yes, it is. I will tell more about it in the course, but it is a hand holding an object. So it's simply, of course, it is the hand of God coming
Okay. Gotcha.
about blah, blah, blah. If you want to, titillate. And what it is we see a hand that comes from something that could be actually either fabric or the representation of sun and clouds. So yes, it has to do with the hand of God, but it is also the way that the hand is holding the sword. So what does it tell us? That it is holding the sword by the heart, and that it then goes all the way up beyond the head because it goes beyond the crown. So the allegory, because those aces are allegories, they are just not one symbol, they are compound of symbols. They are telling us that there are two ways that the human being is holding something. One is a man-made object, which goes in the category of other man-made objects because both the cup and the coin can be held, but the sword, for some reason that we will see in the course, otherwise we will be here 7 hours. I can't tell you everything. And the wand. So what's very interesting about the wand, first and foremost, if you look at it closely, it's both hollow and convex. So it represents both the capacity for interiority and exteriority, just like a cave. There is not a cave without a mountain. There is not a mountain without a cave. And then it grows from water, but once the water is expired, it can feed the fire. So it's two fundamental elements of the human life. But traditionally, because of the womb, the water is feminine, and traditionally the fire is masculine because we get to know the sun when we come out of the mother. So here we have, on the political sense, agriculture and everything that grows. So now we can say, okay, there was a game conceived that represented the tradesmen and the makers of things with the coins and everything that has to do with agriculture and keeping the territory alive in the wands, and everything that had to do with the clergy and the fabrication of more precious objects in the cups, and the ruling of the country through the war, if necessary, in the swords. And
Amazing. So it's basic economics on some level, right?
yes,
I mean,
because if you make a game, you have to create a world that people will play in, and you will be able to speak in 1 minute. But it's like in everything that has an initiatic purpose, and by initiatic I mean even growing wheat can be initiatic. Any refined skill has many layers and levels to it. So a game has many layers and levels to it. And the first level has to be attractive. So then we can apply this geography, just like the I Ching does when you read a well-governed country, blah, blah, blah. Just like when you read the books by, Miyamoto Musashi, all the books of the West, up until the book of the guy of the Aikido, which is amazing, but I keep forgetting his name, Ueshiba. They all talk about the cosmic and the human and the microcosmic at the same time. So we're talking about larger processes,
Yeah.
visible processes, and subtle processes, because the microcosm belongs to that aspect that I called the feminine before. Now you can speak, and I
Oh
can.
no, I guess you're talking about also the sacred and the profane here, which was one of the subtitles of your course. So the profane is just our everyday activities. I mean, it's kind of a dualism because yeah, well, why are they profane and why are inner activities somehow sacred? What's the difference between the sacred and profane here in the Torah?
Everything is profane, everything is sacred. The
Good.
difference is the
Yeah.
way we handle them.
Mm.
And that's why the handling, we can forget about the handling in the major arcana. The cards have hands and they have stuff in their hands. I mean, the world has, wands in its hands. The people in the twins in the sun, they touch each other with their hands. I'm not even choosing. Arcana 13 is holding the La Guadaña, la hoz, how do you say in English? The scythe with
Yeah.
her hands. He is not driving the horses, but he's holding the scepter, etc. But we forget to look at the hands because we become fascinated with the movie, with the
Gotcha.
Hollywood production that the major arcana are. And it's legit. We need, I mean, it's the first, it's like going to preschool and before you go to the university, you have to get your degree step by step. So the way that the minor arcana are helping us is that there is nothing obvious about them. It's an elusive obviousness, to steal from the title of a wonderful book by Moshe
Mm.
Feldenkrais. And the elusive obvious is exactly about learning to see, learning to actually touch, learning to actually taste, to use our senses to know and not to imagine
Mm.
things. So
Mm.
when you go back to the symbolism, of course the sword is the verb. We know it. So of course the sword has to do with our, Jodorowsky said intellectual, but it's a bit narrow, with our capacity to symbolize.
Mhm.
Mr. Gurdjieff
Divide
said,
and cut things to pieces and look at them and
yeah,
externalize stuff. And,
yes.
yeah.
And also to know the harming power of the word, because
Hmm.
it's a sword, you know?
Yeah.
So when Mr. Gurdjieff says that the language of the higher intellectual center is symbol,
Yeah.
before that, I started calling it the symbolizing center. And then when I realized that's what Mr. Gurdjieff said, I was like so happy, as if he had come to me in a dream and hugged me. So it's our symbolizing capacity. And then, of course, the cup is the Graal.
Hmm.
So, of course, it's the Sacred Heart.
Yeah.
And it is based on a base that always have the signature of the woodcutter.
Can you lift it up a bit? Yeah. Right.
So traditionally, the woodcutter is signing here. Here you can
Hmm.
see Pater, graveur à Dijon, Claude Pater, woodcutter in Dijon. And
Hmm.
it is standing on the unstable waters. So we have both aspects of the emotional center, the personal aspect with all the emotional stuff that we need to deal with, and the possibility for a soul, for the sacredness. And then, like I said, this wand is both concave and convex, and it's given. So the only thing you can do with a wand, you can't make it. You can only choose it and refine it, which makes it so deeply akin to our sexual identity, to the question of gender, and to the question gender in biology, and to the question of refining sexual energy as one of the main fuels, because it's divine, it's the creator. So, of course, what remains is the material base on which all of this is elaborated, which could be either the planet or the cell, and that's the coins.
I see a plate too, which I hadn't seen
Yeah,
before.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Food.
absolutely. And also a sun or a star, etc., etc. So, or a seed because it branches out, etc., etc. So that's not an interpretation. That's a discovery. It's a big difference. You know, when we talk about the law of three and the law of seven in the Gurdjieff world, or when Swami Prajnanpad, the teacher of my actual teacher, Arnaud Desjardins, says, you know, everything changes all the time and everything is different from everything, the law of impermanence and the law of difference. It's not something that occurred to people and they thought it was a good idea. It's the law. So what we are looking for in the tarot is the expression of the law, the human law, the psychological law, the cosmic law, etc., etc. So the only way, it's like the sword, to dip it in the water and see if it doesn't break, is to see if we can apply it to everything. And that's where the profane and the sacred meet, is that any sacredness that is not rooted in everyday life is wonking. And any everyday life that is not rooted in sacredness is wonking. And that's where the world is at now. All the woo-woo cacao ceremonies and whatever, and you know, and DMT experiences and this and that are most of the time used for people to believe in their wonderful spiritual powers, but they can't even look at someone when they talk to them. And on the other hand, whatever we see on the Instagram all the time, where people are obsessed with that mortal body and becoming, you know, desirable to everybody, as if that were a sign of anything interesting. So that's the question. There is no objective definition of what is outside of me sacred and profane. And the question is, how do I stand between my nature of survival, that is essentially profane? It's the nature that believes that I'm going to die, and it's right, I am. And the place in the aspect of me that knows that there is a possibility for it not to die or to die differently, and that needs to exert some kind of work upon itself in order to see reality, because the only way to not die is to see reality, to be one with reality. It's the immortality in the moment, as well as the hypothetic immortality of, you know, another kind of body, this and that. I don't want to wiseacre about that. I already have 2 Gurdjieff groups every week where I have to sit through
Lots of
people
wiseacring.
wiseacring through that. I am not going to go there.
I learned a new word for that, and he calls it Gurdjieff, because we're reading Beelzebub, super acring. And that means that you're being highly metaphysical about shit that you'd have no clue about, you know. And
It's where he
it
doesn't
was
say
his critique of Buddhism, which is full of super
He
acring.
doesn't say arch wiseacring somewhere.
That would be good too. No, super acring was the word, the translation in Beelzebub anyway. Yeah.
So you
Well, I
know,
was thinking, just could I make one comment
sure,
here? I was
sure.
thinking about
I think I still have a little water to drink.
I was thinking about how normally we think of moving from the concrete into the metaphysical, and then going up, but I think what I'm hearing from you is it's more like a going down into the basic.
Yeah, it's like Aerosmith's song "Love in an Elevator," going down.
There you go. That's bringing me even out of further down.
I
Yeah, to
want
the
Aerosmith's
basis, the
"Love in an
basis of
Elevator"
everything.
as the jingle of my class, please.
Love it, an elevator. Good. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yes, it's you know, one of the things that Jodorowsky really developed from that incredibly like rich and deep and precious advice from Leonora Carrington, he really did teach us how to deepen the learning to see.
Mhm.
And learning to see is the equivalent of learning to learn, of learning to love, of learning to live. It's endless. It's an endless possibility. So it so happens that the tarot is a game and that the tarot is a visual object. So we have to keep finding playful ways to learn to actually see. And there is only one way to do that. And that's why the reading of the tarot, I call it the game of the being. It was conceived from a world of being for a game of winning and having. And now in our society of winning and having, it gives us a game for being, for coming closer to being.
Mm.
Only way is to put all the money on the table. And putting all the money on the table is to dare to ask burning questions to the tarot. Because if burning questions are not answered by the tarot, then
Right.
why are you wasting your time?
Right. So tarot teaches us to ask burning questions. That's great.
No, it teaches us that anything that doesn't begin to answer a burning question is, you know,
A
um,
waste.
pearls
Yeah.
to pigs. And when I say burning
The
question,
swine, pearls of swine. Yeah.
pearls to swine. And that's what that's, I mean, any one of us has their own fuel. So the only thing I can share actually, besides techniques and stuff like that, is what fuels my hunger and my restlessness for the path, the work. I mean, that's the only thing that has any worth in my interacting with people. The
Hmm.
rest is just another person, you know. And so one of the ways is that I love creativity and beauty, and that tarot has that capacity for guiding us through exploring sacred geometry and ancient symbols and what Jodorowsky called the wisdom of the West through a playful, beautiful, tricky, and also emotional, because I'm sentimental. That's why I'm not a true Gurdjieffian in the post Gurdjieff death sense of it. Because, you know, I think we're actually, it is a devotional path, but that's another story. But I have in me that sentimental thing. I can't help it. It's part of my, you know, inbred nature. So I need beauty. I need burning questions. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere. I get bored, you know? So
Hmm.
that's what I try to transmit with the tarot. First and foremost, the awe in front of its incredibly beautiful structure. I'm in love with the minor arcana. They are like, you keep discovering things in them. But it's like looking at, you know, it's like going to the Altiplano in Bolivia and looking at the pre-Incaic monuments.
Hmm.
It's like it's like the language of stones. It's very silent, it's very deep, it's very tender at heart, but it requires for you to sit through night and day, starry skies and the fog, the heat and the cold. It demands from us some kind of inner persistency. It's shamanic in that sense that the
Mm.
true shamans I knew, I remember that amazing woman, Doña Margarita, she was 70 and she was from Mexico, and she followed Abuelo William into the snow. You know, I don't know if I already told you that story, but and she was going to drag a castor, a beaver behind
Hmm.
her for food, and you know, and so she stood in front of the mirror for a while, and she was speaking to her legs, and she was like, we're going to go to a very cold country, we're going to be in the snow, and you guys are going to walk. And she like told her legs off for days and days before she went up to Canada and took that walk with Abuelo William. So today we don't do that anymore. We run to have better ass, basically. So, or we, you know, we bungee jump to get more, you know, whatever, adrenaline or
Yeah, the pilgrimage is what you're.
so the going through the minor arcana, it is a pilgrimage. There is no easy way through them. You can only have some kind of a map, and then you have to go and go and go. But my experience is that when you get fed up with reading the majors because they tell you something that you cannot crack, because you get used to them, you know,
Mhm.
then introducing the minors is the way to crack your own inner pilgrimage of more and more and more and more innate wisdom. And that's where the profane comes to help the sacred inside.
Hmm.
Voilà.
So it's kind of I'm getting the idea that it's breaking up the crystallization of your
Your
and giving you
post
some other
knowledge.
kind of food.
Yes.
Uh, Gurdjieff would call it perceptions foods.
Yes, and also it's starving yourself from the
Mhm.
pleasure of always interpreting the major arcana the
Oh.
way we do. So it's also, there's that's very interesting story. I think it's Chekhov that tells the story of this boy that was dying and he was eating like crazy, and the parents gave him to Gurdjieff, and Gurdjieff started starving him, and the boy started gaining weight because he was
Mhm.
overfed. I love that story. It may or may not be true, but it's a little bit the same thing. How do we envision tarot from a completely different perspective that is not anthropomorphic? Because the first series of
Mhm.
classes I'm going to give, we're not even almost going to touch the court cards. And then when we reconcile the minors with the majors, we will understand why the court cards are kind of the bridge between them. But I mean, it's falling in love with numbers, it's falling in love with sacred geometry, it's falling in love with symbols that bring us back to the basic necessities of life, remembering that swords in the form of blades were one of the first tools that human beings needed to make. They made blades, and they made cups.
Mhm.
So we go back to a prehistoric kind of knowledge,
Mhm.
go back
Mhm.
to the origins of our own humanity. And so we become more knowledgeable within ourselves with the help of the tarot, and not knowledgeable about the tarot. That's the thing it's like an instructor, really.
Mm.
Voilà, I have nothing more to say. Do you have a question?
Yeah, always. Well, again, so the story is sort of like breaking apart our obvious mythologies and going to something deeper, right? So I was thinking about the relationship between, let's say, the Abrahamic traditions, which are about God and God only, and then the pagan traditions, which have a more multiplicity. And I'm thinking, and I feel in the tarot that it has both somehow. Is that does that make any sense?
It does, but I have to disagree with you. The What I know from what you call the pagan religions, what I know from true shamanism, is a constant remembering of the Great Spirit. So it is about God only.
Okay.
Even
Yeah.
if you go with a flute to sing to a tree, but and what I've understood from the how do you say, the sadhana and the teaching of
Hmm.
Jesus, is that he was constantly in touch with everything that was the most mundane, and especially, the poverty and the hunger and the fatigue, and
Hmm.
then the pleasure of eating and resting, but always used um, as a means for teaching. So I think true spirituality, wherever it sits, is always about this interaction of the most concrete. I mean, maybe I'm deformed, but Swami Prajnapada, one of his main oral teachings, because he never left any teaching, and he was different with every one of his disciples, but he said the path is in the particular, not in the general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't affirming that.
Yeah.
I was seeing that people, like, for example, in Zen and Advaita, they're not interested in tarot often because
Oh, that's cultural
they want to
prejudice.
have the big picture only, and they
Yeah, yeah,
don't.
it's
So
cultural
so so
prejudice.
that was a critique rather than
Yeah.
me
Oh, yeah.
affirming that as an idea.
No, it's
Yeah.
a cultural prejudice. And that's what I am very tenderly and quietly up against. That's why I keep teaching, because all these things I know, and I could practice them by myself, you know. And you don't make a lot of money by teaching 3 classes online. So it's not as if I was greedy about it. And I really don't need recognition or fame anymore. But I am so grateful to this really humble object as one of the many treasures of civilizations at large, that I want to keep sharing this. Yeah, it's as if I owned a very ancient and rare musical instrument that can be made again and played again, and I want to share that.
Mm, yeah. That
And
goes back
yes,
to
it's
the.
true that most people, it's interesting. I like to I like to reach out to people who have a spiritual interest or practice, because most of the time I do the reverse. I kind of give a taste of the path to people who are mainly interested in tarot. So it's also very interesting to give a taste of that tool and how it relates to their path and how it helps paths relate together to people who are already
Oh,
on a quest.
great. Well, there's my question is about magic then. How do you define magic? Is tarot kind of magic? Because I know a lot of people in the occult tradition as well. I
Yeah.
know philosophers. I know, and I'm investigating this thing called magic and what the hell that is. It seems that the best kind of magic is what you're talking about.
Well, you
It's
have to distinguish between what is called high magic in the tradition. I mean, I'm talking now about people who are, you
Mhm,
know, in magic from generation to generation. The only three traditions I kind of know of are, of course, the Corsican tradition, the one in my origins,
mhm,
the Spanish tradition, because the woman who discovered what I told you about, Marianne Lenormand, is actually from a family that practiced magic from one generation to another, and then mostly Mexican magic, like
mhm.
really where it's passed on from, father to son, mother to daughter, etc. So one widely spread aspect that actually comes to, in general, to make up for the lack of efficient medicine and psychology is ceremonial magic.
Yeah,
That is basically aimed at, curing the ailments of people, whatever they are, and also giving hope, which is why a lot of it is actually self-maintainment, self-love, or, cutting bonds that cannot be cut through a form of invocational, sexual magic, love magic, etc., etc. But most of the time is to allow people to just be able to be themselves and breathe. We don't talk about witchery, brujeria. I don't want to use it in English because I know that there's a little bit of a difference, but which is like black magic, which is to harm people, because that's basically, you know, pollution, like to throw
mm,
filth in the subtle space. Some of the magic is meant to help us maintain cleanliness in the subtle space if we are in charge of souls, and that's basically hygiene.
yeah,
And then there is what is called high magic, which is non-ceremonial, which is
mm,
supposed to be the highest form, which is very akin to spiritual work. It's connecting with intention and attention with the flow of reality itself. And so discovering the coherence of reality itself by experience and being able to work for it, towards it, and with it. And that's what spiritual teachers do.
yeah,
So tarot has the three aspects. It has an aspect of helping people find their way and suffer
mhm,
less, but also by putting them in contact with what is usually called synchronicity, because it's a healing feeling to realize that yearning we have inside for something that resonates right with the moment and others is actually not crazy. So it's a machine to undo the rational Western mind,
mhm,
and it is an ally on the path to learn to live a cleaner life and and clean up our views and our relationship with others as a dharmic kind of work, what Mr. Gurdjieff calls, remorse and
mhm,
conscience and external consideration, etc. But it has names in every practice, which is understanding that virtue is not something that is meant to crush you. It's something that is meant to heighten your vibration, heighten your capacity for bearing with more and more extreme situations and becoming a benefactor and a benevolent element in those situations. That's common to every path. And sometimes tarot can even sustain some aspects of our work towards self-remembering, which is the equivalent of what, you know, we could call grace or enlightenment, which is not something we make, which is something that, vocabulary is difficult here, but that is given, always present, but given to our limited possibility in hopefully more and more frequent moments. So that's how I would define magic. Then, of course, magic has different ways. And so in ceremonial magic, there are so many different recipes, and it's a whole poetry that you know, involves cultural traits and stuff. But we're not going to go into that, of course.
Okay. Very good.
Last question, and then I will consider.
I have one more question. Well, maybe I'm just maybe to round off this conversation.
Yes.
Just maybe you could say what your hope and aspiration in presenting this course to people would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the world of survival and suffering, I would really, really, really like for the true nobility and beauty of the Marseille Tarot and its court cards and minor arcana to become more of a frequent resource for people worldwide, because I think we live in a world that is very much bombed with all sorts of images. And so to be able to transmit those really humble and powerful and active and humble supporters of the depth of humanity, that would be a great pleasure for me, because I suffer when it's not around in the field. And then if I talk about myself as a teacher and how I use my time, because I am increasingly aware that death is coming, I hope to gather a group where the quality of our togetherness will create a quality that we cannot attain alone. That would be wonderful. And then hopefully there's a blessing that will go somewhere and feed the work of the masters wherever they live now and participate in something.